Hi, everybody. Welcome to Breaking It Down with Jodi Marks. I can't believe we're already on episode 3. We have an amazing panel for you tonight, and it's going to be a very, very good topic because we all need to talk about it. And our topic today is educating the next generation. So today we have Van Angelo, Shelly Ramey, and Lori Andrews. And they're just going to tell you a little bit about why they're here tonight because they all are amazing teachers and are just paving the way for young adults in our world. So Van's going to take it away.
Hi, y'all. My name's Van Baum. I am a choral music educator located in the Inland Empire. I teach high school. I teach majority Black and Brown students, which is amazing for me because I get to teach students that look like me. I also work as a part-time performer. So when I am not on stage, when I'm not in the classroom, I am on stage, sometimes with Miss Jodi Marks. So I'm here to hopefully bring a little bit of me to this conversation. Can't wait.
Hello, everyone. I am Lori Andrews from Long Beach, and I teach for the Long Beach Unified School District. I teach high school, and I've been teaching for 15 years after being a homeschool mom for about 7 years. I teach primarily Brown students and some lovely Caucasian students as well. And I am here to express my feelings and to listen.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shelly Ramey. I have been teaching since 2007, so I guess I'm entering my 13th year. I teach history at the 8th grade level in South Los Angeles. I teach at a charter school in South Los Angeles. And so I'm very, very excited about where this discussion is going to go and what we all have to say and any questions that, of course, you may have to bring to us.
So the first question I want to ask you all is, what made you get into teaching?
Those are, I'll since I was last to go, first to, or something like, there's a saying. I know there's somewhere, there's a saying. I used to, once upon a time, I thought I was going to be an attorney. And when I was doing my undergraduate degree, and I was upset though, because I was a student advocate, and I was upset when I saw that there were people being able to like cheat the system because they understood what the system was. And it was just students doing it, and like people who were accused of cheating, but their dad called and they got, excused from the accusation. And I realized that there's going to be a whole group of children and people who looked like me who didn't understand that that was a system that they were against, and that they were going to have to deal with these issues when they tried to enter into academia and interact with people who may not have been a part of their neighborhood. And I just wanted to provide my students, or just the kids I came in contact with, like the tools that they would need, especially Brown and Black kids and minority students actually in general, or minoritized students in general. The ability to have the tools to make sure that they were successful in all the environments that they would come in contact with.
Love that.
I hate it.
I mean, long story short, I became an educator because I had a good educator in my life. I had a really great choir director in high school who gave me a lot of opportunities to be a leader and to be in front of other people. And I found out in high school that I was really, really good at leading. I was good at being in charge. I was good at making the rules. Everybody had to follow my rules. It was really wonderful. But then as I was getting ready to go into college, I realized a lot more that there aren't many people that do music education that look like me. And so I wanted to start hopefully filling in the gap a little bit and show my students now that hey, people that look like us get to do anything that we want to do. So.
Well, my story begins with me thinking that I wanted to be a college professor and looking for something to do while I was in graduate school. And that was me becoming an instructional aide. And doing that for just 1 year, I was sold. I was sold on going in the classroom. I just fell in love with the kids. Literally just that I would love to be able to work with, especially the special ed students that I was working with. And so that's what I do. And basically just from jumping in with both feet, decided this is for me. and the rest is history.
I love that because most of those students are so misunderstood.
Yes.
Some teachers just like, if they're in their class, they just like sit them aside and they're just like, go to a corner. And I've
Yes.
seen that, and that's just heartbreaking.
And I didn't have that experience, but I think it's because of being around educators who were so good with those kids, and seeing the small classroom size I know was a part of it, and which is a part of the special education system. And just knowing that you can really develop good relationship with kids when the class sizes are small. And that's what I did. And then I just realized I never wanted to stop. And so that was my next journey, is going to get a teaching credential and teaching.
I love that. I love that you all have different grades, and you know what I mean? And you're showing a person of color as a teacher, because like looking back now that I realize, my first like diverse or just person of color in general was in college as a teacher. Like I had nobody to like look up to as like that like figure that I could see myself as, like Van says, like, you know what I mean? And I always felt like different. Like I've been in a class, like I went to a Catholic school in first grade where I got slapped with a ruler and I was told to pick up my pencil like the right way. And I was like, how do you pick up your pencil the right way? And then also another Black kid in my class got thrown like a marker and an eraser, like a chalkboard eraser. And we're the only people of color, and she's the only one, obviously this white teacher is like treating us this way. And like from that point on, I always had like this in the back of my mind of when I saw a white teacher, like, oh, I gotta act a certain way. I can't like express myself, or I have to like, my like verbal skills were so different to them. And it's just different because I remember having my first African American teacher and being so open with that person in college, and never having that like vulnerability, I guess you would say, to say, hey, this is what I'm going through. Can you help me? Because you know what it's like. And I think that's awesome that you all have that ability to do that now with your students that are still coming into their own. And I just want to applaud you all for that, because I love that.
Thank you.
So a next question that I have is, racism and discrimination have no place in schools or classrooms. So how can we make schools and classrooms a better environment for students?
It's such a hard question because there's so many things that have to be done to be changed, you know? But one of the first things, and it's funny that you mentioned that like you didn't have a Black teacher or a teacher of color up until you were in college and you guys kind of understood each other. But that's one of the first things that I feel like is appropriate to start working on in schools, is making sure that we have people that are teaching students that look like the world that we want to see out there. So I'm not saying all Black teachers have to only teach Black students, more or less just like we want to make sure that we're diversifying our teaching pool, so that way students are seeing more of what they're going to encounter out in the real world, as opposed to only seeing majority white teachers and then they go out into a world that has plenty of beautiful colors in it, you know?
And just think about too, like the fact that my students, because my school is predominantly Latino, we're at probably about 98% Latino. But anytime I interact with my students, or we don't have a lot of Asian teachers at our school, but we have like maybe one, but like the Asian teacher interacts with the students, or, the white teachers interact with the students, or, the Black male teacher interacts, or a couple of Black male teachers interact with the students. We're becoming human beings. And I think that's kind of like a weird thing, we're like, usually we're caricatures, like we're just these fake entities, like, oh, Black people are these stereotypes, or white people are these stereotypes, or Asian people are these stereotypes. And I'm constantly talking to the kids about, your teacher who happens to be Asian, she rides for you. She's here every day. She's, got your back. She's, showing up when she doesn't have to. And that builds it. That creates that idea that, they're just not, that we're human beings, that we have feelings, we have emotions. What you say has an effect. That wasn't nice. My teacher, these are people too. And especially for my age, because they're at that preteen, early teenager age, they need like real world examples. And so having those real world examples with educators, and then also with the teachers, making sure that they check their own biases. Like, okay, if you think, a Black kid is going to do this, like, where's that coming from? Like, what's the conversation that you're having with yourself before you yelled at a kid and told them to leave your classroom? Versus another student who may look, different, and you treat that student differently because of what they look like. So, those are like real, like reflective practices that we have to have as like individuals, just to make sure that we are, both ways, like the kids see people of color, and that our students are, and our teachers actually see people of color too. Like, we get in our bubble as well, but how do we expose ourselves to a lot of different groups to make sure that we're prepared for all those interactions?
And I would add on to that. I mean, that's awesome. I think what you said definitely segues into what I believe has to become part of teacher education and pedagogy. And that's equity, intentional equity work, teaching teachers how to differentiate, not just instruction, but attention, and to build relationships with students in the classroom, and have it be something that they are comfortable with because they got trained to do it when they were still in school. So I know people ask me that question. It has to be authentic, and it has to be real, and it can't be paternalistic. And I'm speaking of, for instance, I know in my district it's been pretty clear that most of the teachers are Caucasian, where we have about 70% of our students are Hispanic, and around 12% are African American, and around 8%, of Asian. And so, and we have awesome Caucasian teachers. They want to know how, they just don't know how. And when they ask me questions, I go, well, yeah, how are you supposed to know how if you haven't had the chance to have that be a part of your training as a teacher? And so I'm big on districts, departments, just having equity training, professional development, where it's just a practice that this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing things for our district. And then it becomes more something that's just organic and real when the teachers are in the classroom, just as real as the content that they're teaching. So I really believe in equity work, and really being intentional about it. And I think that might create some of the change we're looking for.
And when you say equity work, like, who should we hold as like responsible in bringing in those people, to the schools? Like, is it the higher ups that are hiring? Like, how do we get the word out? How do they know? How do we create change in that kind of platform?
Well, I do think we need to begin in allowing students to see that teaching is a valuable profession. And I know in high school we do a lot of pathway work, but interestingly enough, we don't have education pathways. Yeah, we have all of these industries and all of these pathways, but we don't have a pathway where students may want to teach or be an educator. And so we are giving them the opportunities and internships and ways to see, how they can get into the field of teaching. And if we did that, can you imagine in some of these urban schools how how it would change, and how we would possibly have more people of color, wanting to get a credential. And then that's the first step. And then the second step is being able to get a job, because, that equity in hiring is also important, because I know that a lot of times certain teachers of color kind of lean towards certain districts because they just can't get into certain other ones. And so that's a topic that I think is just heavy and needs to be addressed with the higher ups. I'll just say, looking at hiring practices, and then also providing pathways, training for students, at the high school, middle school level.
Right. You want to make it so people of color feel comfortable coming to your school, because they have the same exact, intelligence that they're going to give to the students. It's not like they're not going to teach them right, so why is it so different?
And you also want to make sure that it feels accessible to everybody to be able to apply to these districts, because you want to make sure that it feels like I can go and apply to this place because I know that they hire people that look like me, or they're going to hire. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
That's wild though. Cause I really never thought, like, that's probably why I never saw anybody really person of color. Cause I mean, I grew up in Burbank, which is predominantly white, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not really going to see anybody that looks like me. But I wish I had a person of color growing up, because I feel like I think I would have voiced my opinion more, or rose my hand a little bit more in class, or was more willing to ask like questions, just to be like, just to suck everything in and not be scared of what's going to come out of somebody's mouth, or, you know, or have somebody in the classroom that's like an ally, right? Because when you have students in class that kind of like put another student down about, say, it's like, I don't know, my hair sometimes, you know, I'll have crazy hair days, but just like have a teacher that knows, or like wants to
That
expect
understands
you. Yes, but it doesn't even have to be a person of color. You know, if a white teacher was to just educate themselves on these topics, or maybe say this might be a different culture, this is how they kind of work, and you know what I mean? I feel like teachers have to realize that they're not teaching to one just culture, I guess. You know, they're teaching to everybody. It's a broad span, and not everybody learns the same. So you have to just work on that. And how do teachers work on that going forward? You know, what are some steps that you think they should do?
Like, going back to your original question, which was like, how, in what ways can we make sure that we like eliminate racism in the classroom? I believe we have to start making sure that we decolonize our instruction in a way. Like, the content that we are teaching, it is very Eurocentric, and the way that we deliver it is extremely Eurocentric. And I went to this really, really great conference for choral music educators recently, and somebody gave a really great talk about how we teach these songs from different languages, but then we don't talk about how they don't learn them off of the paper. They learn them by rote, or they learn them by call and response. And so there are ways that we can differentiate our instruction in all of the classrooms that makes it more accessible to all learning types. And then there are ways that we can make sure that we are highlighting, I don't know, like highlighting Black composers more than just during Black History Month. You know, like we should be highlighting composers of all shades and sizes and from all things all throughout the year, as opposed to just Eurocentric composers. So
Yes,
somewhere around there.
Yeah, these we see the stories of like our, you know, minoritized groups, and we see, you know, the stories of Asian Americans and African Americans, but they're always, and you know, Latino or Hispanics, we see it like a footnote. It's like, this is the big event, and these are our founding fathers, and our founding fathers looked a certain way, and then let's tell you this, you know, one side story about this African American group. And so one of the things that is so interesting is that, because when I teach history, is the fact that we have it's like there's like a separation of these like entities. Like it's not a recognition that as long as, you know, almost for about as long as Europeans have been in the United States. Before that, of course, you know, our indigenous population, but African Americans have been here, you know, Hispanic or Latino has been here. And so the fact that we have all these different populations in the United States, and yet their story is not a part of American history, is just, it can be mind-boggling. Like the fact that I have to, like, there's a concerted effort that has to be made to make sure that these stories of these modern, of these different groups are included in our history. And and I'm doing the work. So I don't know if every educator who teaches history across California in our, you know, vastly different school districts all over, you know, all over the state, or even all over the country, but just all over the state, if they're making that effort, or if they even think to make the effort, because their population may only look like them. And so they don't even think to say, okay, let's talk about other group of people, because, you know, not everyone is just one population of people in this one school district. And so I don't know. It's just, you have to have that. You want to make an effort. You want to kind of care. You want to just think to yourself, like, you know, if I really want to be the change, you know, the whole, you know, the cliche statement, the change you want to see in the world. Yeah. Like, how are you that change? Like, how are you really going to make sure that, you know, people aren't being treated differently because of, you know, what they look like and the color of their skin versus, you know, the actual action that they do.
Yeah. And to put a point on that, like you said, you want it to be like a broad thing, because why is, when it's Black History Month, that's really only when you learn about Black history. Also, when you're bringing the Holocaust up, why is it only like that moment you're learning about the Holocaust? Why did they make it an event in schools? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's always an event, like let's go to the Holocaust Museum but but I'm like, but then the rest of the year you forget that they're people, you forget that they have a history too, or like that, like they created, you know what I mean? It's just like, or Black history, they like scope over it. They're like slaves, they came here. Oh, they got their independence. No, people, there's Juneteenth. You know how many people just figured that out?
Right.
You know
It
what
was
I mean?
amazing.
Like,
It was really cool to see.
it's wild to me that I mean, luckily, you know, I did have like people growing up, like my dad's side of the family, they would say stuff. But if you never have that, you're not gonna know. And that's
Right.
like your own history, and you don't even know about it. You're just saying what they taught you in school, and you're taking what the textbook says for value. And that's another thing. How do we make textbooks better? How do we include everybody? You know, who are these people writing the textbooks?
Right. It's about
Well, I can
decolonizing
say
research and stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm really, I have been so impressed with my district. Yes, I'm going to give them a shameless plug because someone had just decided, and I know her name and I'm going to mention it, but to create a reading summer program for teachers and people who were wanted to be involved in learning, and also creating a reading list for adults in our district, and also for students when they come back, so that teachers can have a catalog to look to start to talk about these things, you know, to get ready for what is going to have to be dealt with back when we go back to school in September. There are going to be things that need to be taught and explained about this whole movement, what's going on with the movement, why it began, from all levels. There are questions that need to be answered. And so now we have this great database of books that teachers can go to say, oh, okay, my kids are asking questions. Oh, we went over this civil rights, but it's not enough in the history book. We can go pull these additional books, you know, to just open it up some more, because that's going to be needed. And so I really think that that's the kind of thing that we need. We need someone districts need someone to jump right in and say, hey, let's get this going. Let's get these answers, these questions answered for adults first, and then they can answer questions for the students.
But just like you said, students are going to have questions when they come back.
Mm-hmm.
So how should teachers, or just honestly the community in general, if a student or just the younger generation comes up to you and asks you what's going on, how do you communicate with them? How do you show them or teach them the history?
Honestly.
Well, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, honestly, teach it honestly. That's all I got.
And one way is to be informed. For instance, so in our reading, summer reading, one of the books is biased, one is about abolitionists, one is about white fragility. So we have these teachers that are going to be reading all summer, and they're going to be informed at least from that aspect, and then also from looking in the mirror and just realizing their own biases, their own ways that they are fragile. And I'm saying that from the perspective of a Caucasian teacher, because most of them are in our district. And so I'm very proud that they're going to be Caucasian teachers who really know how to be an ally, really know what that means, and not it just being, well, I have friends who are Black. But no, really an ally, and I'm an informed ally.
That I have friends that are Black. That one. We've all heard that one. You know, like, oh, I know because I have a friend that's Black. But they don't actually like know anything. You know what I mean? What would you do if you heard a kid in class say that? Or like, you know, like how do you get them to listen to you? That's one of the hard things I think about educating the next generation, is getting them to listen and then retain.
Yeah,
right?
You have to stop. I know we have, I'm always stressed out, and I'm sure you all are too, about this schedule that we have to have. Like, by the time I get to this point in time, I have to make sure I hit this standard. I did this, I taught this subject, the kids know this. But especially when COVID-19 first showed up, and before we got out of school, the kids were coming back to school with, Miss, Asian this, or they do this and they do that. And I was like, we're not even gonna play this game. Let's go ahead and stop. Let's go ahead and let's have a real conversation, and let's really get to the root of the fact that you're saying things that is not based on anything. It's not true. And I know you heard it from your parent, and I know you heard it from somebody else in the community, and you're just repeating the stuff that you hear. But before we go on and go anywhere else, let's go ahead and stop and make sure that you understand how what you're saying is wrong, and how what you're saying is hurtful, and how if I don't stop you and let you keep going on and saying what you have to say, it's going to kind of solidify your thoughts and solidify your thinking, and you're not going to know that what you're doing is wrong. And so whether, you're talking about COVID-19 or we're talking about the recent protests, same idea. I had to do with that. Like, just talk to the kids about the history of, rebellions in the United States, and like the consistent theme that we saw with all the different ones that showed up, starting, of course, with the Boston Tea Party. But like, let's talk about destruction of property, guys. But it's just, you have to just be prepared to like stop and like was stated before, and just have that education and be ready to say what you need to say. And I'm already developing, like, one of the big problems, even though my students are all students of color, but they're Latino, but they like to say the N word all the time, because I think it's just a part, they're like, this is, music and urban and culture and the hood. And I was like, I get what you're, I see the world you're living in. However, absolutely not. And so I'm already trying to develop my lessons of, okay, let's talk about the history, and let's talk about how it's not okay, and why you shouldn't be using this language, and da 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 da. And so you just have to be prepared. You have to be prepared to stop and know that you glossing over it and saying, oh, that's not right, and then keep teaching, it's just not, it's not going to help anything. It's not going to change anything. Like, it's the hard work is, stopping and being ready and prepared for, that 40-minute conversation, and hearing all the craziness the kids are going to say, and being ready to say, let's really talk about what we can do to really change it up. Because the kids, like, what was stated, the kids are interested. They really want to know. This is happening, at least for my students, because we're in South Los Angeles, it's in their neighborhood. It's right down the street from where they live. And so they see it, they hear it, they're experiencing it. And so they're really interested in trying to figure out what exactly is happening.
Yeah. And to Shelly's point, like, I have to stop as an educator so that way I can also be an advocate, right? So like, whether they're talking about an issue that's predominantly Black, or like when we were talking about COVID at the very beginning, I also had students talking about China this and Asian that, and I had to stop and we had to have that conversation. Even if I don't always have all of the 100% right words, I have some of the right words. And if I don't stop, then that means that I'm co-signing what they're saying. That means that I'm not advocating for some other minority group or something along the way. So that way I can say, like, hey, we don't talk about other people like that, or X, Y, or Z.
And that's so important, no matter if you're teaching history or music. You're always going to hear those comments right before school, like the class starts. I know, like, all the students, like, they kind of huddle, and you're like, but you hear it, you know what I mean? So it's a good thing that you're going to just stop it and have an honest conversation. It's like, our work might not get done today, but you know what? You're going to walk out if you're knowing something, and it might not, it's going to be a hard conversation, and you might like feel that, because you never want a kid to like feel like insulted, like in front of the class, you know what I mean? So how do you also do that? How do you make a student feel like it's a welcome environment, even if they said something really offensive? How, as a teacher, do you do something?
I will answer that, but I wanted to go back to that question, that huge question you asked, or about how to address the I have Black friends, because I'm not sure if we did. And I know that I also taught U.S. history, and there were 3 words in the history books that I never saw, but I taught my students, and that was hegemony, paternalism, and tokenism. Because I think those words aren't talked about. And then when you hear someone say that, like, oh, I have friends who are Black. Well, okay, are they your friend because they act like you? Because that would be hegemony and tokenism. And I hope that people go look this up. Or are they your friends because you want to save them? Because that would be paternalism. Or why are they your friends? And that's a question, I think, when someone says that statement, that's a question to ask them, to make them think that, should you really be saying this, or why, or what does that mean? And so those are important things to bring up, because I think now especially we need to make sure that we're discussing those things, because as we move towards the movement and everyone's involved, we really want change. We got to make sure it's done in a way where those things are not a part of it anymore. And to answer the question of how I address students saying inappropriate things, I always try to bring out empathy because, and remind everyone that we all have biases, no matter what race we are. I mean, we have things, preconceived notions about people that we just walk around all the time. And that's not specific. And that's not just because one group has experienced something. So I call it out. I mean, I'm right with Van, call it out. Take a minute. We're not going to finish the lesson today because we're going to address this. And call parents and make sure that you are making parents aware that you have this discussion in class. Because who knows if they're getting that from parents, and not that you're accusing parents, but the parents need to know what their child is saying at school and then what you're addressing at school. And I think that's the important part, is to invite parents to sit at the table and discuss what their kids are saying or what their kids are feeling. So that's how I would address a student making an inappropriate comment.
And it depends. I'm sorry, Jodi. Sorry, Jodi. It depends on what part of the year you're in. Like if you hear a kid saying like some deeply problematic things and it's like the first 2 days of school, that's a sidebar conversation. Like, dude, what are you doing? Or hey, homegirl, what are you doing? But if it's like later on in the year and, by then you should have already built that community in your school. Your kids should already feel safe that they're, they can say things, they can try things. There's not going to, they can fail at something and it's not going to be, something that they're, punished for. And just know, like, this is an opportunity for you to get better. This is the whole point of school. Like the school, like, yeah, you're not perfect and you're not going to be. And so you should feel safe enough in that classroom to say some really crazy stuff, but you should also feel safe enough to, or just know enough that we care enough, we love you enough that I'm going to tell you how that may not be okay. And how that statement is wrong, or how, you're hurting someone's feelings, or, whatever that happens to be, just depending on like what part of the school you're in. Like, how can you interact with people, or how do you interact with your students, and what relationships do you have with your students? And, what type part of the year do you have, where you're doing that, so that you can have that those real, thoughtful and honest conversations with the students.
That's a very good point. So we actually have a question from Fedeke Operende. She says, have kids ever come in quoting Trump, and how do you handle that?
Yes, they do, but normally it's because he said something viral, and so they're quoting it.
Twitter.
Normally, it's actually kind of easy to handle because the kids will normally know that it's not know that it's farcical, but they are normally coming in with the oh my gosh, did you hear this type of expression, as opposed to this is what I think is, as opposed to saying this is what I think is fact because the president said so. Does that make sense?
And this is why I have so much hope for the next generation.
I have students of color who are, or Latino students, because mostly Latino at my school, who have very conservative parents. Like, even though my students are in, or my school is in South Los Angeles, but because I'm in charter school, not all of our students are from our community. There's some from like a variety of communities. Even then, some of the students who live locally, they still have conservative parents. And so, I've had many conversations with students at 13, 14 years old, because even in middle school, they have their opinions about things, and they come to school with it, where we're just talking. We're just like having a full, like, it feels like adult conversations about like the economy and about like taxes and about like, their like conservative values. And I'm like, or about like, like gender issues, or like student, it's amazing really the conversation that we're having with the kids and what they come to school with. But you just have to, like, you can't just shoo them away, but like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and just like whatever, you like hear out their thinking, like, why are you saying that? What does that mean to you? What does it mean if I say this to you? What's your thinking, and why are you thinking these things? Just to really have those like really honest conversations. Those are hard though. Like sometimes you get mad.
Right? Sometimes I gotta step away.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I'm very careful not to discuss politics with students. I will let them share what they heard, ask them how they feel about it, encourage them to think for themselves, and then I move on, because I feel that that's not my place to indoctrinate them with how I feel about what Trump said or Trump as a president. That's not my place to do. So I generally do not give my opinion or discuss it. I will allow them to, but I stay away from politics. I just talk about the facts and what's in their history book, and I try not to, like, they don't know what my party is. I'm not asking them what their party is. I will help them register to vote, but and let them choose the party. But for me, I'm very clear to not do that.
When you bring up voting, if you are teaching like a high school class, how do you get them excited to vote? You know, wanting to go.
I tell them when I go vote.
Yeah.
Like when I go vote, because I'm really excited about it. My mom always took me to go voting, and
I got lied.
Yeah. So and like, you get a sticker. Like that's the best part. You get a sticker. But no, last time I went voting, I was the first person to go voting in my precinct, and so I got to do all of these new special things that I didn't even know about. So when I went into my school that day, I told every single class about how much fun I had voting, and like how if they are 17, I can help them pre-register to vote. If they are 18, I can get them registered to vote, and then reminding them how important it is that like they always feel like they don't have a say in things. They always feel like the adults are making the decisions. Well, voting, once you get the right to vote, like that is you getting to have a say in what decisions you want to be made. So I want them to invest in it, and so I try and make it as fun and exciting as possible.
Yeah, I still remember the first time I voted was for Obama.
Yeah, same.
It will always have a special place in my heart, you know? But yeah, I never talked about voting in school. You never talk about those kinds of things until, you know, your mom's calling you and going, did you vote yet? Come on, I'm going to vote, you know?
Yeah. Well, I taught U.S. history, and so it was on my syllabus that I would be registering kids to vote, as that's the lesson.
Yes.
It's a lesson. So it's on the syllabus. You give the parents a chance in the beginning of the year. They have a problem. Oh, I don't really want you helping my kid to register to vote. I never had a problem, but my kids knew, 11th grade, the parents knew you're registering to vote this year if you're 16 and above. And so it was just a part of my curriculum, what I did. And so they just didn't have a choice.
You said you want to pass? Just kidding.
They still registered to vote. Actually, we were pretty excited.
Yeah, but Lori, for you, Susan Wright actually said, can you please repeat those 3 categories? And then maybe can you like explain them a little bit more?
Oh, yes. Hegemony. So hegemony is where a dominant race or in a culture indoctrinates the minority race. For instance, a good example would be back when the Spanish came and they decided that they were going to make all of the Native Americans Catholic. That's an example of hegemony. Oh, these people don't have a religion, they don't have a faith, they don't have spirituality, so we have to go around and build all of these missions and convert them. So that's hegemony. You know, we have the best culture, so do things like us. Paternalism is, well, we want to help you. Oh my gosh, you're a minority and you need help. We're going to do it this way. Let me tell you what you need, and then let us do it. That's paternalism. Instead of inviting that person to the table, asking them what they need, and then providing whatever you can based on what they tell you they need. You don't tell them what they need. So paternalism is a majority race doing that in the way of saying, oh, I'm helping you, when you're really not. And then tokenism is basically when you choose I always call it cleansed minority, the one that's acceptable. Oh, they do things like us, so we'll invite them in to the party, or, you know, we can be friends with them, or we'll hire them because, you know, they act the way we act, and we don't have to think outside of the box for them to be around. We don't have to get to know them because they just act like we act. So they're the token Black. I know you've heard that before, or the token whatever, but it's a token because they fit into the category that the majority race is comfortable with. I hope that explains it. Okay.
And those are so important. And you said you never saw them really in books.
No,
three
they were
categories,
never.
but you see them happen time and time again in history.
In these stories that we teach.
You know,
Right.
but the thing is, I do believe like you learn from your history and you get better. But the thing is, you're not showing all the history.
Right.
You're not teaching the bigger picture. You're just teaching what you want them to see. So then you're not learning from things that you actually should be learning from.
And I can tell you, it's amazing to see real allies, because I am blessed to have real allies in my life. When you explain these things to them and they had no idea, oh my God, I've been thinking that way. Oh my God, I have done that. The aha moments are amazing, because a lot of times they're done unconsciously. And so I just think that that's a part of it, is just clarifying and bringing these terms out so that they can be discussed and done away with.
Yes. We actually have a question pertaining to voting from Gary Mathis. He says, what do you say to students who say my vote doesn't really matter?
My big push this year, even though my kids are younger, but I hear it already, that conversation of like, oh, why do I have to vote? Why should I vote? My big push this year or this next school year, is going to be talking about like local government and how they can participate in local government. So I know, like, for a lot of my students, like the federal government and even state government feels so far away because, distance wise, it is far away. But when you talk about, like like streets and lights and like local things that they can actually participate in, I think that's when that could be really powerful. Like, yes, the federal government is a for real thing, and there's real ramifications for it. But what can we do at the local level to really like start to like do those little mini steps to make sure that kids can, be successful? And so, and the kids are already participating in high school. I'm sure the high school teacher can speak to this, that they already see students who are, participating in their local governments, and they're already like volunteering and like interning with different people. And so that's my big push for sure this school year. And I have been lax on, I've been, so focused on, the Constitution, but to really push the kids to see what they can do locally.
So when you say like in your community, what kind of things can kids do in their community? Like some examples.
There's like a lot of different programs that they have in South Los Angeles. And so they have an academy that is in conjunction with the local police station, where it's done, the students sign up for, and they, participate in like the academy. And also they do like community work. My middle school has a club that's called CASA, and the whole organization is about, educating the students, and then they take that education and they, send it to their parents. And so there's things like they've learned about, and I don't know the exact word for it, but when there's not enough like produce and grocery stores in their neighborhood that provides them with like fresh food. They talked about, I think this year their push was, or even last year, was voting. So they were talking about voting issues and registering the parents and how to participate with voting. And I know they've also had several visits to like the police stations, but there's so many organizations. And I speak predominantly of South Los Angeles. There's so many organizations that are available for the kids, whether it's the after school group or, just a local community organization that they can participate in.
So you said the police station. I'm going to throw a big question.
I know.
No.
I know. When I said it, no.
So because you say that, how should not just teachers, but as a community, because, right, we're taught, the police come to protect you, and everything that we're seeing social media wise, I personally don't believe all cops are bad. My father was a cop, but there are bad cops. But how do you educate them to, not like necessarily want to act out or just have a good relationship with cops when they see them, or try to not be scared? You know what I mean? Like there's now, I feel like, because now my cousins, I know that some of them have a fear, like I'm gonna be next. But how do you talk to the kids? What do you say?
I remember, I've been out of the classroom for about 3 years until this past year, but I remember having a conversation with students and teaching them about their Fourth Amendment rights, and just the awe that they said, wait, they can't make me sit on the curb. I said, no, they have to have a reason for that, and they have to state that reason to you. And some of them, 14, 15, 16, had already had those experiences more times that they can remember. And so I think just by me helping them understand that they have rights, I think it helped. That year, I believe that, you know, they ended up really feeling a little bit better, that at least they had a voice. And then also, there is a program that comes into our school district called Why'd You Stop Me? And it really teaches a lot about just all of that, you know, the rights and the cops to be concerned about and the ones not to. And then another thing is, I was really fortunate enough to, the Long Beach Police Department is very intentional about coming into the classrooms and into the schools and talking to the students, allowing them to ask them questions, to say, we don't want you to fear us. We know that we have some bad cops in our police department, and we are finding them. I had our deputy superintendent, our deputy police chief come in and do a community circle one year at my high school. And this year I had the chief of police come to my school and do a circle. And I know it made a big difference because the kids came up to me afterwards like, wow, he's normal. Oh, wow, he's from East LA. Oh, so he knows what it's like to be stopped because he shared his story. So I think it's important to have community partnerships. It's really important for schools to have those important partnerships, like Shelley said, and so that the kids can have an avenue and somewhere to go, and to just feel like they're safe.
It's hard to, because it's the ownership of, like, the kids have to feel safe, but what is it that's making the kids feel safe? And so we
Yeah.
really have to also think about, like, beyond like our schools, like how do, like, those communities, how do our community members, because they're all a part of this community that we live in, right? Like, how do they know and they're doing what they're supposed to do to make sure that the kids don't feel fearful, that they're, you know, they have to have the ownership of it. They have to take responsibility for whether it's the history or the culture or these, you know, bad cops that are there and they're doing, you know, things, but the good cops can't do anything about it. Like, how are, like, what are they actively doing? Like, I should, if I am being a victim of this, or if I'm being mistreated because of these systems that are in place, how do we make sure that these systems are no longer in place and that they're not being used to treat me differently? And so it's really hard. Like, you know, you talk to kids, yeah, about your Fourth Amendment rights and those different, you know, the things that you're allowed to do. Like, you have these First Amendments, you can, you know, do this, but don't do that. But, you know, these are things you can do, but like, how do you take the ownership of their own, like, I'm being mistreated, so because I'm being mistreated, how do I not be mistreated? Like, no, like, who's mistreating you and why are they mistreating you, and like, how do you change that? It's weird.
And when you all talk about knowing your rights, I knew for the longest time, I feel like, honestly, if my dad didn't tell me my rights, I wouldn't have known, you know? Like, I remember he would tell me certain things, like, if you do this, the cop's gonna give you a ticket for this. Like, just getting those like little insights just because he was a cop. But I feel like for the longest time in school, I never got told, like, if you get stopped, this is what you do, or these are your rights. Like, you don't have to open the car door for them. Like, they can't force you out of a car. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. Like, but kids don't know that. So when do you think is the right time to start talking about their rights?
Well, I did in my U.S. history class, and that was 11th grade. So approximately 16 to 17 years old. And I know the Why'd You Stop Me program comes into high schools. They might even come into middle schools. So that would be 11 through 18.
Yeah, I started early because I know even in my own personal life, I've had like sneaky people and like sneaky, I would say sneaky people, but you know, police officers like, oh, I just want to, you know, come and check to see if everyone's okay. Like, and in your middle school brain, you're like, oh, I'm going to let this police officer in my house, but there's no reason for it. Like, that's not legal. Like, you, like, and the fact that I don't know that at such a young age is problematic.
Right,
Like,
because
you should
view them as a protector.
yeah, you view them as a protector, and you don't realize, like, okay, these are the rules, and this is what they're doing, and this is why they're, you know, saying, oh, we're just here to make sure everyone's okay. No one called you. I know no one called you and you showing up to my house. And so like, no one used the phone. I'm here by myself. Like, why are you here? And so they'll use like these strategies sometimes. And I get that they're, I understand that, the whole idea, seeing crime, stopping crime and everything, but it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth if the kids if when a police officer came to my house I feel like I had to be early middle school, like, so maybe 11. And they're like, oh, someone called and we want to make sure everyone's okay. No one called you. I know that because I'm by myself. So, what are you like? How is that okay? Like, how is that justify your actions? And if I had known that I did not need to let them in the house like that and been adamant, like, don't let nobody in your house, if like that conversation, mm-hmm. How much more like now that story wouldn't have been, it's a fearful story for me. It's not a powerful story. It's like someone hurt me and like came into my environment and did me an injustice, and versus like, oh, I stood up for my rights. And so we have to really make sure the kids know, even like, my niece is like 10 and we drive around. She's like, that person got pulled over, auntie. He don't look like he did anything. I was like, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But I like the fact that she's aware of it already. I like the fact that this 10-year-old, actually she's 9 when she said it, knows that somebody might be mistreated because of what they look like. It may not be because they did something. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm also very sad about it too, but I'm also very happy.
I've definitely seen through everything going on that younger generations are realizing, the differences, I feel like, because growing up as a kid in kindergarten or preschool, you don't look at color. Your friend is your friend. And mm-hmm. When do we start going away from that? You know what I mean? Like, when do we start seeing our friends are different than us? So what switches? Like, I don't know. I look at kids and I'm just like, they're so joyful and happy and they're just kids. You know what I mean? And then the older you get, like, just, I don't even know.
They're still just kids. Like, even in high school, like, even my seniors, they're still just kids. They're still figuring it out. Shoot, I'm 26. I'm still a child. What?
Yes, you are. I'm old enough.
I will co-sign that. You are a baby. I'm gonna put you in my pocket.
Aw, thanks.
Just told your age, man.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
Well, what's interesting is I love what social media is doing right now, and we're in a really special time in our world where social media is teaching good things. And so I saw a video of a young white young lady. She must have been maybe 11 or 12, and her parents were just saying all of this racist stuff, and she was combating them with statistics and facts, and
I saw that video.
It was so foolish. And I was so proud of her. And I said, who was this young lady's teacher? Who were the people who just gave her all of the facts? And that's what we got to do. I think when teachers are raising people, we're raising these kids right along with the parents. We have to give them a counter argument to what they might hear from home. And we got to start it as young as possible. We got to introduce books about Harriet Tubman, and what she did and things like that for the Caucasian students to see, so that when they may hear things from their family, they go, no, that's not true. No,
they call them out.
You're wrong. And even the parents, just like that young lady did, she did an amazing job. And so I think we have some work to do. And we, in some ways, they're not kids anymore, especially our COVID-19 babies and our George Floyd babies. When they come back, they're going to have PTSD. They're going to have some trauma. And we're going to have to really address that and not see them as babies or kids anymore, but kind of seasoned with what we've dealt with in 2020. So we got to start telling them the truth. I mean, what else can we do?
When you brought up COVID and when you keep saying when they come back, I keep thinking about how much all of the parents are going to appreciate you all so much more, because I've definitely seen some of them be like, child, get her out of here. You know what I mean? Like, they really realize how undervalued, like, you guys do so much work for them and they don't know.
Yeah.
You know? Because you're teaching them, like you said, you're teaching them how to be like better human beings. You're teaching them how to be educated, how to fend for themselves in the world. And then you're also
providing childcare.
And then you're
say
I
that.
found out this year we're providing childcare.
And then you honestly are. And I just want to say that for you, every teacher out there, that I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I encourage all the parents who appreciate us to write their local government and their legislature and their state where we receive a lot of our fundings and let them know how valued we are. So
because they're trying to get rid of some of our funding. So
you know they are.
Yeah, it'd be nice to keep it.
Please, if you want your child care.
You want your kid in school longer.
I know. Like, we're cheaper than a nanny.
Why are schools so underfunded?
That's a great question.
Okay.
You're still trying to figure that out?
Well, it's hard because like you don't want to say that people don't value education, because it's proof that we do value education. The fact that education costs so much money post high school shows that people put some type of value on education, even if it's only a monetary value. So it's hard to understand why education funding is hard to come by or why it's getting cut, because it's a necessity. So I wish I had an answer, but I don't know.
I know, maybe they don't value teachers. I don't maybe it's like, maybe that's the thing. Like, they think maybe that's what it is. Maybe they think we're just taking care of these kids. It's like, oh, like these, this is all we do.
I heard a teenager say they were about to graduate and they were like, what they wanted to do. And they said, well, I can always be a teacher as a last resort.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much school you have to go through.
Teaching was my first choice.
Do you realize we have the same student loans as doctors and lawyers?
Right.
I have 2 masters. Like, this is not a real thing.
Right. About to go get another one.
To be a teacher, it's like, no, honey, we are not a last resort. You can think of
we're a first choice.
Yes.
And so I think that's what it is. It's like, what is that whole saying? Like, those who can't teach. Like, no, I could do it, and I'm teaching you how to do it because that's how good I am at it. And
right.
So,
period.
It's like that's the thing. And so it's I think we're just not seen as a valuable group of individuals, which is really crazy, because almost every single person, except for those like really almost every single person has a teacher that either affected them positively or negatively and made them want to prove them wrong, or positive, like they pushed me to do my best. Like, every person has a teacher that they can point back to. And for us to be literally in everyone's life, and the fact that they're like, oh yeah, that's great, here's this NBA player, let's pay him,
right.
$20 million or something.
Somebody commented, her name is Michelle Montgomery.
That's my mom.
Is it?
Hi, Mom.
Shout out to Mom.
She's also a teacher, so
we love you.
Great.
She said, we fund what we value. We value entertainment and sports more.
It's like was it a Dave Chappelle skit that had the teachers getting drafted like NBA players?
Yes.
Oh, that's like literally one of my favorite things.
I love that. Oh wow.
Yeah. But it's so true though, as a little kid, they think of like, I'm gonna be in the NBA, or you know what I mean? Like these big, like so entertainment kind of value. But like Lori said, like why don't they have like internships and stuff for teachers? Why can't kids get the same interest? And that's why I think it also needs to change.
That's why I mentioned we need to have an education pathway in the high schools, where it just like we have the pathway of law and medicine, we need an education pathway where we're finding the kids who want to teach or want to be educators, and we are grooming them and getting them ready to get into our credential programs while they're simultaneously getting their bachelor's and things like that, and just kind of making that an option for them in high school, whereas right now it's not, surprisingly. But yeah, something I'd like to change if I can.
I like that idea.
I hope so. So kids are always learning, right? They're always listening when you don't think they are.
Yes.
We've learned this. They'll repeat anything back to you and you'll be like, I did not say that to your face. But how as a community, like how in the home do you think that people should teach love instead of teaching hate? Or maybe look at themselves a little bit more before they open their mouth around the next generation and have them thinking what they're thinking?
How, huh?
I know that's hard because we can't dictate what people do inside their homes.
Yeah.
You know, like I can think and feel however I want, but a child is going to walk into a house and that house is going to be whatever it is. It's going to act however it does. It's going to think however it does. It's going to move however it does. My responsibility is in the classroom because that's the only place that I'm allowed to have control. And my responsibility is working with a human in the classroom so that way they go into their community and hopefully affect it positively. I don't know if they're going to be able to affect their home positively, but they can affect the places outside of their home in a positive way. And then hopefully that community will start to reflect on the home eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good answer.
That is good.
I second
thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
You're like, I know, good answer.
I know. I'm over here thinking, yeah, he's 26, but he has good answers. Thank you.
I already know
Real
I
talk.
already know and met some of your children, Van. They always say you drop knowledge, so
thanks.
I already know. No, but so we're gonna actually close it out, but yes, we can honestly keep talking.
Everyone.
We can talk for a while.
Happy hour.
We really could. Honestly, you know I can, because you all bring knowledge to this crazy world that we live in. And I really just value all of you. I really do. Because you're so well spoken and you're so well educated. And I just know that when kids walk into your classroom that they all will walk out a better person. And that's what I hope every teacher does, you know? I hope every teacher has a kid walk in and walk out better. You know what I mean? Just
that's my goal.
Yeah.
Makes it all worth it.
And also, y'all are doing everything I couldn't, because I don't know if I could be in a classroom with all those students.
Listen, they ain't that bad.
I know, they're kind of cute.
Sometimes they smell a little bit, but they ain't that bad.
Gotta teach them better, Van. Come on now.
I'm working on it.
So to close it out, I just want to ask you guys, what are your hopes for the next generation?
That they're better. They're better than the generation before. Like whatever better is, and hopefully better is the better I think it is. I hope they're better than the generation than before.
That they continue to be loud and boisterous and shake the table as much as possible and create positive change like they already are doing. Even when they don't have the power to vote, they're making a difference. So.
And I hope that they actively listen and really, really continue, as Van said, you know, the work that they've already started. And I'm very impressed with the generation that I see even now. And so I just hope that that continues and that builds and that they are much better than the generations before.
I see it. I have hope.
Yes.
I do too.
You know, they're already making things that don't mess with the Gen Zs. Okay.
I know.
Period.
Seen that out there a lot on social media.
Yeah, I've seen it too. As a millennial, I have seen it too.
Yeah, period. Don't mess with them.
Well, thank you all for coming on. Yes. Thank you all for coming on so much. And thank you everybody for watching.
Yeah.
You know, episode 3. Keep coming back every Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. We're gonna have more panelists on talking about topics that need to be talked about. You know, we're not shying away from anything. You know, if 2020's brought anything, it's brought some wisdom. And hopefully everybody gets educated and wakes up, because we've all had time in quarantine. So maybe this is the year, you know, everybody, that 2020 vision. Everybody asked for it when the new year came. Here it is.
Period.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you everybody for watching. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.